Well, hello, and welcome to Kentucky State Capitol. We're delighted today to host representatives of the Bluegrass Trust for Historic Preservation. The Kentucky State Capitol is actually the fourth state capitol building in our history. There were three before. The third capitol is still with us. It's down on Broadway, just a few blocks from where we are. The first two Capitol buildings burned down and are long since gone. Construction on this building began in 1905, simply because the Commonwealth had outgrown the smaller old Capitol. It was substantially completed by 1909. State government workers began to move in. The General Assembly met here for the first time in 2010. And that's the year that we use as its birthday. We use 1910 to mark the day the building opened, in conjunction with the General Assembly. We celebrated the centennial back in 2010. The architect for the project was a gentleman by the name of Frank Mills Andrews. Now, Andrews was a fan, if you would, of the French designers. He designed this structure in the Beaux-Arts architectural style, a collection of classical French, Greek, and Roman architecture. Andrews, he was also famous, in addition to doing several state capitals. Hotels were a big thing for him. He designed classic hotels in Cincinnati and New York and Washington, D.C., but a man of honor in the architectural field, and often architectural students come here to see his work. The building at the time, now over 100 years ago, cost just under $2 million to build. In terms of today money, it would take upwards of $1 billion to duplicate it. Interesting, I think, is the fact that the three branches of government are still represented right here in this building. The executive branch is here on the first floor. The office of the governor is right behind us. That's where Andy Bashir comes to work every day. The office of the lieutenant governor is just down the hall, as is the office of the attorney general. The office of the secretary of state is found here. Now, that's not to say that this is the entire home state government. It is not. But the three branches are still located right here. We are in the rotunda. Rotunda is a Latin word for a large central room under a dome. And that's exactly what we find, the rotunda. Frank Mills Andrews used the dome over Napoleon's tomb at Paris, France, as his model for our dome, which extends some 7 stories above the rotunda floor. You might notice the pandemic murals at the base of the rotunda. Those, at the base of the dome, I should say, the pandemic murals are actually a relatively new addition. They were added in 2010. They were supposed to have been here at the time of construction. That never happened. But just ahead of the centennial, they were finally added to complete the project. Here in the rotunda, we recognize 5 prominent Kentuckians, prominent in our Commonwealth's history. The centerpiece, of course, is Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States, the only Kentucky-born president in our nation's history, most famous for his Emancipation Proclamation, which freed the slaves. And we are reminded noted here in the rotunda that the Commonwealth of Kentucky provided both presidents during the Civil War, and both are showcased here. Abraham Lincoln, of course, the President of the Union, and back here, in the corner, Jefferson Davis. Jefferson Davis, Kentucky born, Fairview, Kentucky was his birthplace, the first and only President of the Confederate States of America. I guess my favorite is Henry Clay. Henry Clay was known as the Great Compromiser. Clay was an orator of note, one of the great statesmen in our nation's history. He is recognized as such in Washington, D.C. His work that he did negotiating compromise between the slave and non-slave states actually forestalled the start of the Civil War for many, many years, earning him the nickname, the Great Compromiser, Henry Clay. Over here, we see Alvin Barkley. Alvin Barkley was the first vice president to come from the great state of Kentucky. Barkley was born down in Graves County in western Kentucky, grew up and was educated in Paducah. And I think a favorite story is Ephraim McDowell. In our world, we might recognize an Ephraim McDowell Medical Center or maybe a Ephraim McDowell Research Center. He was a pioneer in the field of ovarian surgery, the father of ovariotomy. He was a Virginia-born doctor, practiced in Danville, Kentucky, not far from where we're standing. His office is still open for visitors to stop by, and well worth a day trip sometime if you're out and about looking for something fun and educational. Dr. Ephraim McDowell. That concludes our visit to the rotunda. Let's go for a little walkabout. How do you want to do this here? We call this the labor of love. It is the product of an effort by the Kentucky homemakers. Now, you'll notice there are 120 squares representing 120 Kentucky counties. Each one highlights a particular historic or a cultural focal point for that particular county. Nelson County, for example, my old Kentucky home. I noticed Ballard County, famous for its waterfowl populations. There's a beautiful mallard. Mason County, north on the Ohio River. But you kind of get the idea, and every Kentucky county is represented there. Of course, Franklin County features the state capital. Let's walk this way just a little bit. This display hall is called Kentucky Women Remembered. It features over 60 hand-painted watercolors that highlight the famous women of Kentucky for their contributions to culture, to education, to women's issues. Among our watercolors, you would find former Governor Martha Lane Collins, Crit Llewellyn, Mary T. Maher, Loretta Lynn, Georgia Davis Powers, Jean Ritchie, famous Kentucky women all up and down. The selections are made by the Kentucky Commission on Women. And with that, we'll walk over here. We have, just off of the rotunda, a couple of permanent and rotating displays in these glass cases. The quilts of valor. These are done in honor of Kentucky's servicemen and women who have defended our great nation on behalf of the Commonwealth. This quilt display is provided by the National Quilt Museum in Paducah, Kentucky. We anticipate a new and different quilt will be here soon. And again, those rotate over time. They come and they go. Let's walk across the way. The Kentucky Commission on Military Affairs put together this display commemorating the Commonwealth of Kentucky and its contributions to the U.S. military. And just across, a collection of photographs that I find extremely interesting. This depicts various phases in the construction of our enormous Capitol building. Enormous by today's standards and certainly huge as standards of more than 100 years ago. But you see the Capitol building in various stages of construction. Okay? And with that, let's go to the second floor. Here on the second floor, we get our first really good look at the expanse of the marvelous old building, its size. Here on the second floor, we find the judicial branch of our government. This floor is home to the state reception room, the state law library, which is fascinating, the Supreme Courtroom of Kentucky. Will be a stop that we'll make here in just a couple of minutes. Often, travel writers and visitors say that the state reception room and the Supreme Court room are, without question, the two most beautiful rooms in the state capitol. We'll show both of them to you, and we'll leave that decision up to you. 36 monolithic, solid granite columns. 20,000 pounds apiece. Now, consider construction over 100 years ago and the fact that they did not have the modern construction equipment that we have. They didn't have that. They had ropes and chains and pulleys, block and tackle, and horses and mules, manpower and brains, and each one of these 36 columns was delivered to the floor of the rotunda and set in place using ropes and chains and block and tackle and pulleys and horses and mules and all. Amazing. Amazing not only that they did it, amazing that they built this place in 4 years. Center Point in Lexington took longer than 4 years. We get a look at the staircase. Staircase is on either end of the building, up to the Senate and the House. Frank Mills Andrews liked to copy a good design. If he saw something that appealed to him, he would use it in his work. The staircases are copies, as it were, of the staircase that you would see at the Grand Opera House in Paris, France. Visitors who have been to both concur. and I've had the good fortune to have entertained visitors that have been to Paris and said, yes, that is what we saw at the Opera House. Much of the lighting comes from the skylights. I've heard them referred to as stained glass. I've heard them referred to as art glass, so I call them stained art glass. They are a big picture of the lighting scheme here in the Capitol. And I think one of the most interesting features are the lunettes, those hand-painted murals over the Senate chamber and over the House of Representatives. Both depict Daniel Boone in different settings. On the far end, over the House of Representatives, the mural, or lunette as it were, is called Pilot's Knob. Pilot's Knob is to the east of here. It was where Daniel Boone and his merry band of travelers got their first look at the bluegrass region, what Boone would call the marvelous level of Kentucky. On the end above the Senate, we see a lunette called the Treaty at Sycamore Shoals. Again, you see Daniel Boone with his long rifle. He has brought together the Transylvania Land Company and representatives of the Cherokee Nation to negotiate the sale of property that would become Kentucky and part of north central Tennessee. That's an interesting story that's worthy of more research. So any of our young viewers, if you need a really good, really quick term paper, look up Treaty of Sycamore Shoals. Interesting stuff. Let's walk over this one. This is the State Law Library. Most visitors don't get to go in here. We're going in there today, and we're going to be very, very quiet because it is a working library. Again, the State Law Library is the consummate collection of all law books that govern the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Volumes that date back to when Kentucky was part of the Virginia Commonwealth. Attorneys, occasionally judges, will come here to do research, to pull out the various oldest volumes and read the law as it was written. Here is where you would find anything and everything to do with Kentucky law. Now, architecturally, come here. Notice the second level catwalk. Glass floor, Carnegie steel. If you look closely, you can see the imprint, Carnegie steel. The bookcases are actually made of steel. We're talking fireproof, right? Fireproof. Painted to look like mahogany, of course. But made of steel. If you ever get a chance to visit, try to come around Halloween. They make a big coffin right here in the middle of the floor out of books. It's pretty interesting. But again, because it is a working library, large groups are not allowed, we thought you'd enjoy a stop here. The second floor houses the offices of Kentucky's Supreme Court justices and their staff people, all found right here. Up until 1976, this was the Kentucky Court of Appeals. that's when Kentuckians decided to create yet another level of court review. And that's when the Supreme Court came into being. The Supreme Court moved into here. The Court of Appeals is now out on the east side, or the Lexington side of Frankfort. Considered by many to be one of the two most beautiful rooms in the Capitol. This is the state reception room, okay? Prior to 1953, this would have been the site of governor's staff offices. This would have been the waiting area. Had you an appointment to see the governor, you would have been welcomed and seated to wait your turn. It was Governor Lawrence Weatherby in 1953 that decided the governor's office should be on the first floor. He thought that was the best way to accommodate Kentuckians when they came to Frankfort to do business with their government, maybe visit with the governor. He said, shouldn't we really be on the first floor? And he had his staff move everything downstairs. This room is a copy. Again, we talked about Frank Mills Andrews liking to take a good idea and use it again. This was copied after Marie Antoinette's receiving room at her favorite palace, La Petite Trianon. But had you had an appointment with the teen queen, you would have waited in a room that looked just like this. With one major exception, she had tapestries that hung on her walls. We have murals depicting similar scenes, but those are hand-painted murals. Architecturally, I think one of the standout features are the infinity mirrors. The infinity mirrors are placed in such a way as though you see three chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. When you position yourself in front of the infinity mirrors, they seem to go endlessly in either direction. And that is by design. The French designers liked mirrors. Mirrors were a great way to increase light and a great way to project the illusion of more space. The state reception room, nowadays it's largely used for ceremonial purposes, for the enjoyment of our visitors. You may have a ceremonial bill signing in here from time to time, but if you were coming to a reception or something like that hosted by the governor, that would probably be in the executive mansion. All right, let's walk this way a little bit. This is Kentucky's Supreme Courtroom, the home of the Supreme Court. People ask, do they still use this old courtroom? Well, most definitely, most definitely. The Supreme Court is the highest court in Kentucky. It hears only the most significant legal issues. It also reviews any cases involving a capital punishment. Those come here for review automatically. We are a death penalty state. Those cases get reviewed here in the Supreme Court room. People say you don't have a jury box. Well, we have a selection of 7 jurors that we call justices. Justices of the Supreme Court are elected by the people of Kentucky to hear our most significant legal issues and to make rulings. They come from legal districts all across the Commonwealth, from far western Kentucky to far eastern Kentucky. They're elected for 8-year terms by the people, and every 4 years, the justices select from among their own the Chief Justice, who is the chairman, as it were. He mans the gavel and conducts the business of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court meets the second full week of each month. They'll be here, I guess next week will be the second full week. I would bet they may postpone that. We'll see. Streaming video allows people at home to watch the proceedings of the Supreme Court. Each of those cameras focused on one of the justices, and a camera over that door that's focused on the presenter of the moment. This is all Honduran mahogany. Truly, truly, by law, irreplaceable in our world, a product of the South American rainforest. And again, people regard this and the state reception room as the 2 most beautiful rooms here. Now that you've seen them both, make your choice. All right, let's walk on a little bit. Would you like to see the chapel? You want to see the chapel? Again, you're getting a sneak peek at some things most people don't get to see. Portrait of the most recently retired Supreme Court Justice. Whoa, hon, whoa. Justice Bill Cunningham from down in western Kentucky. You may see him, he's quite a historian. You may see him on KET with his historic preservations, his presentations he's done on aspects of western Kentucky history. Wonderful fellow. He's always one of my favorites. I kind of hated to see him retire. He always had a few minutes for visitors. If he was here and people like us were touring, he'd stop and check. He was never too busy to say hello. This is the chapel, something most people don't know is here. I would wager that there are people who work in this building that don't know that it's here. And interesting, it is on the Supreme Courtroom floor. And this is intended to be a place for reflection, because oftentimes people that come here are doing business that will affect their life. And sometimes it's good for, imagine a young attorney making his first presentation to the Kentucky Supreme Court. He may want to come ask for a little divine guidance, as it were. And as this room is, and easily can be considered a religious symbol, it is maintained with private money. There are no government funds spent here. As a matter of fact, the last renovation in here was financed by one of the women's groups involved with one of the local churches here in Frankfurt, but they raised the money and oversaw the redo. And that eliminates questions might arise about spending government funds on a religious symbol. Kind of an interesting stop. I think, let's go to the third floor. What do you think? The legislative branch? I'm sure we were out of time 20 minutes ago, but we are on the third floor now, and this is the legislative branch of our government. This is where the laws are made. And here in Kentucky, we have the bicameral legislative structure, which means two components. We have the Senate and we have the House of Representatives, where we'll be here in just a few minutes, not unlike the House of Commons and House of Lords. There are some states that have a single unit assembly, but we adopted the House of Commons, House of Lords model for our General Assembly here in Kentucky. This is the Senate, the Kentucky Senate. There are 38 members. They are elected by the people of Kentucky all across the Commonwealth. The Senate President is selected by the majority party. He's the person that runs the show. He runs the floor, conducts the business of the Senate from his chair at the head of the room. The beautiful old roll-top desks that you see, they are original. They were here when the very first General Assembly met in 1910. Some things have changed. Each desk is now computer equipped. And the lighting has been updated to accommodate color TV. For many, many years, the lighting was largely lamps on each desk. But that changed in our world. All the sessions of the General Assembly are carried on KET, Kentucky Educational Television. So we are color TV friendly. Above you see the gallery. People are more than welcome to come and observe the workings of the Senate. They do have a pass system, but that's only to control the number of people that can come in at one time. Anybody can get a pass. There is no cost. And I think any legislator would encourage people to come and see how it works and see their Senate and their House in action. You can certainly do that here. Let's walk to the other end and we'll take a look at the House of Representatives. We are in the House of Representatives. Some people might call it the lower chamber, equivalent maybe to Britain's House of Commons. There are 100 members. Remember, we said that in the Senate there were 38 senators. There are 100 members of the House. And again, they are elected from legislative districts across Kentucky. Representation is determined by population, not by county. Lines are drawn in conjunction with the census every 10 years. And their purpose is to make sure each district is approximately the same size as every other district. There are no big, powerful districts and little bitty districts. They're all about the same. Now, if you think about it, Jefferson County, our most densely populated county in Kentucky, has the most representation. I believe there are 7 representatives that represent various parts of Louisville and surrounding counties. My little county here, Franklin County, we have 2 that represent our county and part of Woodford County. So again, it's about numbers. It's not about county lines. Our General Assembly meets every year. And that, matter of fact, has changed in recent history. They used to meet every other year. The even-numbered years are what we call the long session. Those are budget years. The odd-numbered years are shorter. They don't deal with budget issues. Like we saw in the Senate, there is one person in charge, one person that conducts the business on the floor, and that's the Speaker of the House. Again, the Speaker of the House is elected by members of the majority party and is charged with conducting the business on the floor. The House of Representatives. When they're in session, you'll notice the 2 beautiful pictures at the front of the room. Those become scoreboards during the sessions, and every member's name appears. And when the speaker calls for the question, at the push of a button, you'll see a Y or an N, a yay or an A from every member, and it speeds up the process somewhat. Let's go back downstairs. There are 2 more things I want to show you, and then we'll let you go. Distancing may be a little difficult, but we'll do our best.
I can take the stairs. I'll just take the stairs and you downstairs.
That's be careful on them steps.
So how long have you been giving tours of the Capitol?
I've been here since, I forget really, I think it was about 2009. I retired from the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources and came over here shortly thereafter when they were needing some people. I thought it would be fun. And it is. And it is. Let's walk down here. I purposely saved one of the newer exhibits for near the end of our tour. We're very, very, very proud of it. I grew up here in South Frankfort, and as a kid, this was part of our playground, where we came to sell magazine subscriptions and M&Ms to the workers whenever the school was raising money, and we played ball out on the Capitol lawn and came to the snack bar to get a Coke or whatever. That changed with 911. And in today's world, the building's much more secure, and those kids don't run around selling M&Ms anymore. I wanted you to see for sure, the Chair of Honor. This is a recent addition, just in the last few months. This honors soldiers missing in action and prisoners of war provided by the Kentucky Department of Veterans Affairs and the Veterans Program Trust Fund, the empty chair. It attracts a number of visitors in and of itself. One more stop. Do a little pan. I think we'd be good with a little pan.
And this is the
That's
governor's
the governor's office right there where you see the seal. That's governor's office. We'll make this our final stop. These are the First Lady miniatures. These are representative of all the First Ladies in Kentucky's history. Now, they are shown in gowns that would represent what they wore to their inaugural ball. In some cases, those gowns have actually been made from a swatch of the original gown. The Kentucky Federation of Women's Clubs installed this exhibit and maintains it. We'll walk just across the other side. In most cases, First Ladies are the governor's wife, right? Well, as you can imagine, not every governor has had a wife. So we have some other hostesses, official first hostesses. Our youngest governor ever was Governor J.C.W. Beckham. When he was governor the first time, he wasn't married yet. He was only 29. His mother served as his hostess. And other interesting stories that accommodate our First Ladies. Interesting is Martha Lane Collins. Her miniature here also displays the pin she wore as the governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. There was quite the discussion when Kentucky elected its very first and so far only lady governor. Well, what are we going to do about a first lady when the governor's a lady? Come on. Well, who better to be the first lady than the first lady governor herself? And she said, I got this. I can handle it. So whenever she entertained at the executive mansion a formal affair, she would descend the stairs in her long gown with that governor's pin right here. And she wore both hats very, very well. The governor's mansion, the executive mansion, is also here on the grounds. It was built between 1912 and 1914. It is the second executive mansion in our history. 50 acres is what is represented here. We have the floral clock among the major tourist attractions here in the capital city. But when you combine the state capitol and the floral clock and the executive mansion, one of the only executive mansions that's actually open for public tours, one of the only ones in the country. So we do pretty good when folks come to visit. Hey, listen, it has been a hoot to walk around with you all, and we certainly appreciate the Bluegrass Trust taking an interest in this wonderful old structure. We think that not only do we believe it to be the most beautiful state capital in America, we think most of the folks that come here feel the same, and we know Kentuckians are very proud.